Welcome to Wolfe's World. Quiet, precise, and always a step ahead. Tell us where you're listening from. Liking and subscribing helps support the channel and the next case. Now, follow the clues. Nero Wolfe and the Legacy of the Stolen Typewriter. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee and Fritz's lemon croissants, light enough to make a man forget he was indoors, when the doorbell rang. It wasn't time for the mail, nor was it a grocery delivery. Fritz never missed a schedule and never tolerated improvisation. I placed the cup on the saucer, wiped my fingers and went to the door. 3 knocks had followed the bell. Not rushed, not hesitant, just 3. Evenly spaced, like a man obeying instructions. I opened the door 8 inches, no more. The chain stayed latched. The man on the stoop looked like he'd either just run from trouble or was still deciding whether to go back and shake its hand. He wore a frayed herringbone coat, and the ends of his scarf were uneven. His eyes darted once over my shoulder, then down the hall, and finally landed on my lapel pin, the modest one Wolfe lets me wear when I'm official. "Emery Leach," he said. "Printer." I waited. "I need to speak with Mr. Wolfe. I have something for him." He lifted a brown envelope, thick, creased at the corners. My eyebrows lifted a notch. "We don't take unsolicited manuscripts," I said. "It's not a story," he replied, eyes flicking again to the hallway. It's a matter of consequence and danger." I unlatched the chain. He stepped in with a kind of reluctant shuffle as though entering a confessional. His boots tracked a faint line of salt from the sidewalk. I guided him into the front room. He saw the red client chair and the yellow one Wolfe reserved for himself. He hesitated. "Sit." He didn't. "Suit yourself," I said, sitting myself and flipping open a notebook. "Now, who's threatening whom?" "I didn't say anyone was, but you're about to." He glanced at the door again, then back to me. Does Wolfe keep things confidential?" "No. We take out classified ads the next day." I met his eyes and let the sarcasm sit. "Start talking." He sat finally, envelope still in hand. "I run a typeset and print shop on 12th and Baxter," he said. "Inherited it from my father. We mostly handle poetry broadsheets, personal stationery and government flyers. Nothing fancy." "And?" He wet his lips. "Last Thursday, a typewriter went missing from the back room. Not a Remington, not Underwood. It was an Adler." "German?" "Yes, pre-war. Temperamental thing. It had a defect, left a faint smudge on every lowercase e. We kept it out of service, but my apprentice liked practicing on it." He opened the envelope and pulled out 3 sheets of paper, each typed, each short. 1-paragraph threats addressed to 3 different individuals. I took the top one. The paper was plain, slightly yellowed. The ink, dark, unblotted, told me the ribbon had been fresh. The language, however, was anything but polite. The last line read, "You took my voice, now I take yours." The E in voice had a faded crescent beneath it. He passed me the 2nd and 3rd letters, each to a different name: Leonard Vance, Elsa Tarr, Charles Bream, all typed, all smudged in the same place. I whistled through my teeth. Leach sat forward. "I didn't write them. I didn't mail them. But they were typed on that Adler. I know it." "Do you still have the original machine?" "No. Like I said, it was stolen." "And the police?" "They think it's a prank, or a disgruntled customer." "And you?" He looked down. "Mr. Goodwin, these 3 people, they were all on a panel during the war, a publishing board, Military Literature Review. My shop printed rejected manuscripts for archive purposes. That Adler handled them. Someone's dredging up old grudges." I leaned back. "And why bring this to Wolfe?" "I've heard he's discreet. I don't want to be part of something unsavory." I let the pause stretch. "You think someone's going to get hurt?" "I think someone already has." I raised a brow. "I delivered flyers to Vance's building this morning. There were police outside, a gurney." That turned my stomach a half twist. "You didn't ask?" "Would you?" He was right. Wolfe didn't take dropping clients lightly. But this wasn't a manuscript. It smelled like murder. I stood. "Wait here." Wolfe was in the plant room. 12:30 meant he was trimming a rootstock or swearing at a phalaenopsis that had dared to bloom a day early. I knocked twice. "Phooey, what is it?" "A man named Leach, print shop owner, brought something odd." I waited. After a long minute, Wolfe opened the door and stepped out, reluctantly. He hated being interrupted during orchid time. He hated worse being involved in someone else's mess. But he didn't go back in. He saw the papers on the table, read the top one, snorted. Empty threats. Leach stood quickly. But the typewriter, the smudge, I do not consult on stolen office equipment. They're not pranks. Mr. Vance is undoubtedly alive and irritated by the attention. Sir, Mr. Leach, Wolfe said, slowly returning to his chair, you may be sincere. You may also be the author of these missives, feigning concern to obscure your hand. I cannot say. I do not investigate possibilities. I only consider facts. He waved a dismissive hand and reached for his beer glass. Leach looked from Wolfe to me, bewildered. You won't even look into it. No. But Fritz will show you out. Fritz, wordless and precise, appeared at the threshold as if conjured. He offered his usual polite nod and extended one arm toward the hallway. Leach opened his mouth, then shut it, gathering the envelope with trembling fingers. He didn't thank us. When the door closed, Wolfe took a sip. Unfortunate. What is? That he may be right. You think someone's dead? No. Wolfe leaned back and closed his eyes. But someone will be. That someone turned out to be Leonard Vance. The next morning, the Gazette ran a front-page headline. Real estate developer shot in locked study. No sign of entry. I handed Wolfe the paper over breakfast. He read it slowly, twice. They found the body at 9, I said. Housekeeper heard the shot but couldn't get in. Door locked from inside, window latched. He folded the paper and set it aside. Do we regret dismissing Mr. Leach? I asked. No. Why not? We've not been asked to regret, and it may still be coincidence. I shook my head. The letter, the smudge, the timeline. He reached for the bottle and refilled his glass. Coincidence must be eliminated, not assumed. That is your task. I spent the next 3 hours at police headquarters and then Vance's building. I didn't get much, but what I did get matched Leach's story. Vance had received a threatening letter last week, typed. It had been shown to the police but dismissed as a crank. Same phrase, same smudge. Kramer was not pleased to see me. You think Wolfe's swooping in now that the blood's dried? He doesn't swoop, I said. He sits. Very well. Kramer grunted. Well, tell him this. If any more of these letters turn up, I'm coming straight to his doorstep. I'll bring the press with me. Sounds dramatic. I'm not playing games, Goodwin. Vance was shot in a locked room. Nothing taken. Letters all we got. That typewriter might be the key. I left him stewing and took a cab back to the brownstone. I found Wolfe in the office reading the lives of the Habsburg archdukes. I set the envelope down on his desk. He didn't look up. You said no. I did. And now? He closed the book and reached for the envelope. This, he said, opening it, is no longer about threats. It's about a typewriter, and the person who needed it. He unfolded the letters again, studied them, and tapped the edge of one. Smudged E's, he murmured. Defective ink strike, predictable, identifiable. And traceable, I added. He nodded once. Archie, begin at the beginning, learn everything about that Adler. Who had access, who wanted it, and who might have been silenced by the recipients of these notes. You're taking the case? No, I'm obliging my sense of order, and I despise messes. I smiled. So, what do we call this? A courtesy to the dead, he said, and an inconvenience to the living. I reached for my hat. Outside, the sky was the colour of bruised smoke, and the wind had shifted cold. But I'd felt it too, the ripple, the kind of ripple that travels ahead of a second killing, and maybe even a third. The rain came in low, fine sheets, the sort that doesn't drum, it whispers. Manhattan wore it like a veil that morning, dimming the storefront signs and softening the angles of buildings that usually stood sharp against the grey. I unfolded the Gazette while my eggs cooled. Wolfe, behind his usual barricade of toast, coffee and disdain, was reading Gibbon again, the fall of something or other. I let him have his silence until the headline spoke louder than I did. Real estate figure shot in locked study. Vance found dead behind bolted door. Police baffled. I slid it across the table, face up. He didn't lift his head, but his eyes scanned. I watched them follow the lines until they slowed at the paragraph about the sealed room. He sipped. Leonard Vance? The same. The man who received one of those letters. Correct. The one with the smudged E. Correct again. And Mr. Leach? Presumably chewing his own fingers off somewhere. Wolfe folded the paper, neat as a minister closing a prayer book. We are not involved. You said the same yesterday. I was right, I buttered toast slowly. But the man's dead. That does not make him interesting. Kramer might disagree. He often does. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Fritz appeared at the dining room arch. Inspector Kramer, he said. Wolfe grunted. Bring him in. Fritz turned, then remembered himself. Archie, if you will. I wiped my mouth, stood and crossed the hall. Kramer was in no mood for greetings. His hat dripped onto the doormat. His shoulders were set. Don't worry, Inspector, I said. We still have the same rug. Step lively. He growled something I didn't bother to pass and followed me into the office. Wolfe had already taken his seat. Yellow leather, a beer beside him. Gibbon turned face down. Kramer took the red chair opposite. He didn't wait. You saw the papers. Wolfe nodded. You turned down that printer. Correct. Well, congratulations. Your instincts are still as useless as your courtesy. I smiled. Wolfe didn't. Kramer slapped a folder on the desk. Vance was found in his study, locked from the inside, window latched, no sign of a struggle, bullet to the heart, no weapon. No weapon? Wolfe asked. None. No prints either. But this, he opened the folder, was on his desk. He pulled out a single sheet, typed. Wolfe took it, turned it under the lamp. I rose and stepped behind him. The text was brief, 5 lines, centered. A liar profits from silence. You buried the truth. I will bury you. Marcus never forgot. You shouldn't have either. The E's were all slightly faded. A gentle smudge ran under the curve of each one. Wolfe didn't speak. Kramer leaned forward. Typed on that Adler machine, same as the threats. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. You verified that? Typeface, spacing, defect match. We're having the ribbon analysed. And the name? What name? Marcus. Kramer grunted. We're working that angle. I cleared my throat. You said the door was locked. Deadbolt. Inside. Had to be forced open. Window was double latched. Wolfe leaned back. Who found him? Housekeeper. Came to bring his tea at 10. Heard nothing until she knocked. No sign of forced entry elsewhere. None. Neighbours? No reports. No suspicious sounds. Just a single shot. Muffled, apparently. And the room. Pristine. Desk untouched. One paper out. That letter. And the body? Slumped at the chair. Gunshot wound straight through. Angle suggests someone standing directly in front. Yet no one could have entered. That's the point, Kramer snapped. Wolfe said nothing. Kramer turned to me. You still have that envelope from Leach? In the file cabinet. I made copies. Good, I'll need one. Of course, Kramer stood. This isn't just some crank sending hate mail. It's deliberate, Wolfe said. It always is. Don't play philosopher. If you know something, say it now. I know only that a man is dead, a man who had enemies, who likely earned them. Kramer's face flushed. So, you're still not taking the case? No. Fine. He turned on his heel. At the door he paused. If another body turns up with a typewritten letter, I'm coming back, and I'll have a warrant. The door clicked shut behind him. Wolfe exhaled slowly. Shall I assume, I asked, that we are now interested? No. But you had me copy the letter. Yes. So? I am permitting curiosity, not participation. Shall I feed the curiosity? You may, cautiously. My first stop was Vance's office, a sleek suite on the 14th floor of a glass-fronted building that pretended not to smell like paint thinner. His secretary, a sharp-boned blonde with a white collar and a steel smile, told me to wait. I didn't. I passed her desk and stepped into the private office. She followed naturally. You can't... I'm not touching a thing. The desk was clear. No files, no phone calls jotted in pencil. Just a photograph. Vance shaking hands with someone near a ribbon cutting. I leaned closer. The man next to Vance wore a military pin. I checked the placard below. Veterans Housing Cooperative, 1947. The secretary said, he was proud of that. Do you know Marcus? Her brow furrowed. We don't have a Marcus. I mean the name, the one in the letter. She hesitated. There was a man, back in 45, writer. Used to come in angry. Wanted funding for a book. Mr. Vance turned him away. Name? She shook her head. I think it was Gant, or Galt. I nodded. Thank you. She folded her arms. He sent letters, you know, rants, all typed. Do you have any? We burned them. Too bad. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe had resumed Gibbon. I waited for the right page turn. Her name's Elsa Tarr. He looked up. Pardon? The second recipient, the woman from Leach's envelope, editor at the Manhattan Verse. And the third? Charles Bream, board member of a wartime publishing council, handled classified print rejection. Interesting. I'll visit both. Why? Because if I wait until they're dead, Kramer will be back, and this time he'll bring reporters. Wolfe closed his book. Do not intrude. Do not alarm. Simply learn. I nodded. He poured beer into the glass with his usual ceremony. And Archie, he said. Yes? If either of them receives another letter, I'll bring it back unopened. He grunted, which from Wolfe counted as approval. I took my coat from the rack. Rain had thinned, but the sky still frowned. Outside, the city moved as if nothing had happened. Inside the file cabinet, 3 names waited to see which one would stop being alive next. It was just past noon, and Wolfe was deep into braised lamb and contempt for anyone who read American verse published after 1920. You'll like this one, I said, handing him a crisp typescript page I'd clipped from a quarterly issue of the Manhattan Verse. He glanced down. Elsa Tarr? Editor-in-chief. He squinted at the opening stanza. For the foot that stepped on gravel, death follows like the cartwheel of regret. He grunted and set it aside. Leonard Vance is in the ground, I said, and Elsa Tarr is gone. Wolfe stopped chewing. I took that as permission. She hasn't been seen since Tuesday. I checked with the magazine. Her deputy claims she took a last-minute retreat in Connecticut. No phone call, no forwarding address, just a single suitcase missing from her apartment, and the landlady says she never left. Indeed. She's the second name in that envelope. Yes, she's missing. Yes. And? He chewed, swallowed. Are you expecting dismay? I do not fear symmetry. I fear corpses. That's 2 out of 3, and the third hasn't been home in 2 nights. He dabbed his lips with his napkin. Go on. Apartment still tidy. No sign of forced entry. A stack of poetry books on the nightstand. One was face down. Coffee in the sink, half full, mould around the rim. The kind of mould that takes 48 hours to think about showing up. No suitcase. One gone. Closet half open. Not the kind of packing someone does in a hurry. He sat back. Where in Connecticut? They didn't say. He closed his eyes. And the landlady? Mrs. Lenora Greaves. Widowed, suspicious, deeply allergic to unannounced guests. She insists Miss Tarr did not leave the building. Any visitors? None seen, but Mrs. Greaves doesn't sleep much and her ears are trained on the stair creak like a concert violinist. Reliable? She'd make an excellent firing squad. He reached for his beer. Very well, you may dig. Gladly, he pointed. Start with the literary office, then the widow, then the war. I took the 7th Avenue line to 33rd and walked east through a pocket of grey slush and newsboys who were already bored with yesterday's murder. The Manhattan Verse was headquartered in a brown brick building that used to be a glove factory. Now it peddled metaphors, rejection slips, and faint whiffs of ink and pine soap. I climbed to the 4th floor. The outer office held 2 desks and 3 filing cabinets, all partially hidden by half-read galley proofs. A woman in a herringbone skirt was typing with one hand and drinking something that steamed from a chipped mug. Elsa Tarr? I asked. The woman blinked. She's out. Yes, I noticed. I'm Mr. Goodwin. The one who investigates things that don't rhyme. Mind if I ask a few questions? I'm Ruby Sloane. I handle subscriptions and correspondence. She set the mug aside. Miss Tarr left Wednesday morning. She said she needed a few days to think. Did she say where? Connecticut. Somewhere quiet. Said she'd be back Monday. She'd travel alone? She didn't say. She usually vanished midweek with no warning. Ruby hesitated. Once, during the war, but that was different. How? There was a hearing, some kind of federal review board. She was called to testify. About what? I don't know. She never said. Who else was involved? I think Vance was, and someone named Charles. Bream, I think. I nodded slowly. Was she afraid of anyone? Not until last week. That earned her a glance. Explain. She got a letter, typed, short. Didn't say much, just that she'd buried something that shouldn't stay buried. She showed it to me. Still have it? No. She tore it in half and flushed it. She said it was just an old wound. Was the letter signed? She shook her head. But she said the E's were funny, like they'd slipped their moorings. Smudged. That made 2 recipients and 1 typewriter that hadn't forgotten the war. Where's her office, Dome? I asked. Ruby gestured past a door with a fogged glass pane. I knocked, waited, and entered. The room smelled of paper and Turkish blend. The desk was bare except for a red pencil, a stained tea mug, and an open folio of sonnets. The top sheet bore a handwritten note. Repetition as reinforcement. Dangerous. Reconsider stanza 3. I checked the drawers. 1 open, 1 locked. I didn't pry. Wolfe would have objected. On the windowsill was a photograph. Elsa and 2 men in uniform. Navy blues, stern faces. The backdrop, a conference banner. War Literary Review Committee, 1943. Vance stood beside her. The second man, labelled in fine pen, was Charles Bream. I returned to Ruby. When was the last time you saw her? Tuesday. She left with a suitcase, but no coat. No coat? She hated them, said they made her look square. Still, it wasn't that cold. She hesitated again. But she didn't take her gloves or her umbrella. Just the suitcase and her notebook. What kind? Black, leather, elastic band. She always kept it with her. I thanked her and left. Lenora Greaves lived on the ground floor of Elsa Tarr's building, just east of Gramercy. She opened the door on the chain, then recognized the card I slid through. You look like someone who'd iron their socks. Only for funerals. She let me in. The apartment was humid with tea and lavender. She's missing, isn't she? Yes. You think she's dead? Not yet. She led me up 2 flights. She came in Tuesday night, that I know. I heard her heels. I was peeling pears in syrup and she always passed by at 8:30 sharp. Never earlier, never later. And after that? I didn't hear her leave. Could she have? Only if she floated. Visitors? Not a soul. No phone calls either. I listened through the pipe. That was unorthodox, but I didn't argue. I knocked the next morning, no answer. She often ignored knocks. No, not Elsa. She believed in civility. Key? She'd never permit it. I leaned against the banister. You said she wore heels? Yes, pumps, brown. They clicked. Do you remember which direction? Up. So she came home? Absolutely. Then she never left? No, unless she'd gone out the fire escape. But the snow would have told tales and she hadn't packed for stealth. I climbed to her door, knocked. No answer. The doorknob turned freely. I stepped inside. The apartment was still as a held breath. No signs of struggle, no signs of anything. I opened the closet. All her shoes, all her coats. The suitcase was missing, but her gloves were on the radiator, and her notebook nowhere in sight. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was mid-book and mid-glare. You disturbed my postprandial hour. She's gone. You confirmed this. Not officially, but the suitcase is missing, the door was unlocked and no one saw her leave, and she got one of the same type letters, smudged E's and all. He closed the book. She and Vance were on the same wartime panel. Yes. So was Charles Bream. Correct. And Wolfe, I said. You remember that panel? He grunted. I submitted an essay on psychological resilience. It was rejected for being too inflammatory. By whom? By a majority vote. I remember 3 signatures, Vance, Tarr, and someone whose initials were MG. Marcus Galt? Wolfe didn't blink. That was the man whose manuscript was rejected. Yes. And now he's sending letters? If he is, then we are not the targets. Not yet. Wolfe leaned back. The typewriter connects the threats. The smudge confirms it. 3 recipients, 2 vanished. One remaining. Bream. He nodded. Begin with the war records, then the literary archives. Find the original panel reports. And Archie. Yes? Do not lose Bream. I tipped my hat. Outside, the streetlights flickered like unreliable memories. Somewhere in Connecticut, or not, a woman who read everything may have missed one warning too late. The municipal archives didn't advertise itself. It didn't need to. If you knew where it was, you probably didn't want to be there. A stone rectangle off Center Street, it housed the city's unwanted memory, shelved in acid-free paper and locked behind more doors than sense. I showed the press pass Wolfe kept in the safe for emergencies, a real one too, forged with such elegance it would have convinced Hoover himself. The clerk behind the glass nodded without enthusiasm. What are you looking for? Wartime Publication Reviews, Civilian Panel, 1943. He frowned. Restricted. Press inquiry, for a piece on post-war censorship. He didn't smile. He disappeared. 10 minutes later, he returned with a folder and a sigh. Don't remove anything. Don't mark anything. Gloves on. He slid me a pair of cotton gloves like a funeral director offering comfort. I took the file to one of the reading booths. No lamps, no warmth, just the hum of stale air and the sound of the building resenting its own age. The folder was labelled Office of Wartime Literary Affairs, Review Committee, Sublabel, Rejected Material, Non-Combatant Narratives. Inside, a dozen reports. I flipped through until I reached one marked with a paperclip and a yellowed sticky note. Memoir submission, Galt, Marcus E., stamped across the top. Rejected, unsuitable for distribution. Typed below, title, The Quiet is Louder There. Subject, soldier memoir, European theatre. Status, rejected. Rationale, tone erratic. Subject demonstrates psychological instability. Material may be misinterpreted. There was a note attached. Smaller font, typed separately. Reviewers' comments. Panel expresses concern regarding narrator's emotional reliability. Language described as excessive. Fixated on themes of betrayal. Recommends file be sealed from publication or external duplication. Signed, L. Vance, E. Tarr, C. Bream. I kept reading. At the bottom, a single sentence was added in darker ink, likely from a different machine. A soldier's voice can't be buried under silence forever. I turned the page. On the reverse was a photocopy of the original rejection sheet. And there it was, the lowercase e, faint smudges beneath it, every one of them. It wasn't printed from carbon or hand-marked. It had been typed on that Adler. The same one Leach claimed was stolen, the same one used in the threat letters. I looked back at the front page. Marcus E. Galt. The ghost had a name now. A soldier with a rejected voice, one who knew exactly who to blame and how. I packed up slowly. No rush, no panic, only the quiet realization that I had just shaken hands with motive. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was rereading something from Baring Gould and sipping his beer with the expression of a man who had invented patience but detested using it. He looked up. Well? He existed. Who? Marcus Galt, infantryman, European theatre, submitted a memoir in 43. Denied by the panel, Vance, Tarr, Bream. Reason? They said the tone was erratic, language emotional. They suggested he was unstable. Many soldiers are. They said he was dangerous in print, that he fixated on betrayal. Wolfe took a breath. What else? I found a typed rejection, copied years later. Every E bore the smudge. He didn't answer. I waited. You believe, he said finally, that Mr. Galt has returned. If it's him, he's been waiting. The machine used on that rejection, same as the threats, same error. The Adler. Yes. Wolfe closed the book and stared at the wall. Galt would have motive. He'd also have knowledge of the panel members, their locations, their histories. And their guilt, Wolfe frowned. Their judgment. Semantics, he waved a hand. Anything else? The final line on the review note, added later, different machine. Content? A soldier's voice can't be buried under silence forever. He tapped his finger once against the desk. Poetic. Also pointed. And Elsa Tarr signed the rejection, along with Bream and Vance. 2 are already gone. Not Bream, Wolfe nodded. Then he is next. And us? I was not a reviewer. You submitted to the same board. Pfui, I submitted under a pseudonym. Still, he might know. He would not dare. Neither would most men, until they do. He looked down. You retrieved a copy? No photographs allowed. I memorized the text. Then transcribe it. We may need it. I sat at the desk and began, line by line. Galt's words, or at least what they rejected, marched out of memory like boots on wet stone. And as I reached the bottom, Wolfe said, "You will find him, Archie." Where do I start? Where all ghosts sleep. And where is that? Where their names were struck from the record. I finished the last line, folded the page, and under the desk lamp the ink reflected faintly, not unlike that smudge beneath the letter E. The bell over the shop door didn't ring. It clanged like a dull brass warning, the kind that told a man someone had returned, not to buy paper, but to collect a truth he was owed. I stepped inside. Ink was the first thing that hit you, the warm, ironed scent of it, mixed with machine oil, glue, and the ghost of cigarettes smoked where signs forbade them. Emery Leach stood at the far end of the floor, shoulders hunched over a platen roller. His collar was unbuttoned, a red pencil behind his ear. He didn't look up. "I've come for the truth," I said. He froze. The sound of the press stuttered, then stopped altogether. "Mr. Goodwin?" "Yes, again." He turned. The pencil dropped from his ear and rolled across the tray. He didn't retrieve it. "I don't know what else I can tell you." "That's the thing. You haven't told me anything yet." He looked at the floor. His boots were stained with what might have been red ink, or something older. I walked to the counter and placed both palms flat. Elsa Tarr is missing. Leonard Vance is dead. A smudged typewriter connects them. He swallowed. "I told you. It was stolen." "You told me it vanished. I think you know more." Silence. I leaned closer. Wolfe doesn't like riddles. He especially dislikes liars, and I'm a poor substitute for patience. He stared at me, then he sat. "There was a man," he said. "He came 2 weeks ago, tall, gaunt, wore gloves, said he'd written a book once." "Did he give a name?" He hesitated. "Marcus Galt." I let it hang. He said the machine was his, that it had been loaned to the shop during the war for safekeeping. Back then, we had shortages. Sometimes customers left equipment and came back later. Sometimes they didn't. "And you never returned it?" "No one claimed it. It sat in the corner. The alignment was always off. The ribbon feeder stuck. My apprentice used it for practice. We never charged for it." "Until Galt returned." He nodded. "What did he want?" "The machine. Nothing more." "Did he threaten you?" "No. He didn't need to. His eyes did all the talking." I crossed my arms. "And you said no?" I stalled. I told him it was in storage, that I'd check. "But you didn't." "No." "Why?" Leach looked away. "Because it had been used. Dozens of pages. Government contracts, personal letters, flyers for protesters, anything. If someone got a hold of one of those pages and compared it to a threat letter, they'd trace it back." He nodded. I tapped the counter. "And then what?" 3 days later, the machine vanished. "Just gone?" "No broken locks, no forced entry, but it was gone." "Inside job?" "I didn't say that." "But you thought it." He didn't reply. I waited. Finally he stood, walked behind the register, opened a drawer. He brought out a long leather-bound book, faded corners, frayed spine. "A ledger?" I asked. "Yes, customer records." "From when?" 1943 to last month." "And Galt?" I recorded every drop-off, including his. His name's in there, once, for a ribbon replacement. No address, just a note, hold, return by request. I opened the book. The handwriting was neat, tight, like someone writing for someone else to read under pressure. There it was. Name, Marcus Galt. Date, April the 2nd, 1943. Note, temporary deposit, Adler J4. Awaiting clearance. "Why awaiting clearance?" Leach shrugged. He said it was connected to a project, confidential, something federal. "And you believed him?" I had no reason not to. "Did anyone else use the Adler?" "Customers, no, but my apprentice, Ricky, typed practice pages, and I used it to label order tags." "Still have any of those?" He shook his head. We burn waste pages every Friday. It's shop policy. I stared at him. Did you tell Wolfe any of this? No, I panicked. I didn't want it to come back on me. You didn't think murder might come first? I didn't think Galt would turn revenge into ink. He nodded. I closed the ledger. Wolfe will want this. I thought so. He passed it over with both hands like a priest surrendering a book he didn't believe in. Do you think he'll come back? Galt? Yes. I looked around the shop, at the windows, the door, the walls with their yellowed signs and curled corners. He never left. Back at the brownstone, I placed the ledger on Wolfe's desk, like a crown on velvet. He didn't touch it. He let me speak first. He came for it. Galt? Yes, 2 weeks ago. Leach admits it now. Wolfe poured beer. The bottle hissed. He wanted the machine returned, and was refused. Leach lied, said it was in storage. Was it? No, in use. For flyers, office memos. Nothing malicious, but the smudged E was in circulation, which meant exposure. Exactly. Wolfe leaned back. So Galt recovered it? Stole it. Wolfe lifted the ledger. Is he in there? Yes, one entry. April 1943. Note says Adler J4 awaiting clearance. Suggests military context. That's what Leach thought. Wolfe flipped pages, slowly. Does the ledger help us locate him? No address, no phone, just his name. And now a trail of bodies. He paused. This was never about exposure. It was about erasure. Wiping the record? No, rewriting it. He stood. Where are you going? I asked. Nowhere. He crossed to the bookshelf, retrieved a volume and returned. He opened it to a marked page. A speech. Wartime, 1943. Addressed to the War Literary Council. It included a quote. The page may smudge, but the truth endures. I read it aloud. That was Galt's phrase, Wolfe said. He used it in his letter. And in his rejected manuscript. So? So he believes himself a martyr, misunderstood, denied. Now he seeks to punish those who silenced him, using the very tool they once dismissed. I said nothing. Wolfe closed the book. Find Ricky. Who? Leach's apprentice. He practiced on the Adler. He may recall the last person to touch it, besides Galt. I nodded. Anything else? Yes. Tell Fritz I'll need veal kidneys by morning. Galt might strike again. Yes, which is why I'll require a sound breakfast. I smiled. Wolfe tapped the ledger once, then reached for his beer. The case, it seemed, had moved from ink to blood, but Wolfe's appetite, like his logic, never wavered. The afternoon light slanted across Wolfe's office in a slow, golden slide. Dust floated in the beam that angled past the curtain fold and settled on the spine of a red-bound pamphlet on Central European diplomacy. Wolfe had not spoken for 5 minutes. Not a mutter, not a sigh. That was longer than most courtroom pauses, and just as loud. I was seated across from him with the ledger open, but I wasn't reading. I was watching him watch his thoughts arrange themselves like chess pieces. When he finally spoke, it was without preamble. There was a symposium. I straightened. December 1944, a luncheon panel at the Armitage Club. Subject, censorship in wartime publishing. Go on. I had been invited to respond to criticism of my essay on moral attrition in non-combat deployments. Let me guess. It didn't go over well. Wolfe grunted. There was a man in the audience, not an officer, not in uniform, civilian clothes, dishevelled, intense. He'd come on a guest badge, no institutional affiliation. He asked a question. No, he demanded an answer. What kind of question? He accused the panel of silencing real soldiers, not with malice, but with fear. He said the public only wanted heroes, not truth, and that the board had turned literature into lullaby. That's poetic. His phrasing was not without flair, but it was his eyes, I remember. Why? They were the kind of eyes that no longer blink when shots are fired, eyes that saw betrayal and assumed it was structural. And this man was Marcus Galt. I did not know the name, he did not give it, but after the panel he approached me. Wolfe leaned forward. We spoke briefly. He told me he had written a memoir, unsentimental, unadorned. It had been rejected by the War Literary Board. He believed the rejection had killed what remained of his purpose. Did he say why? He said the rejection wasn't because of language. It was because of who he was. He had written about doubt, and they had no place for that. Wolfe's voice dropped a note. He left me with a napkin. I blinked. A napkin? He had scribbled a phrase across it, in pencil, bold, angular strokes. I kept it for a time. What did it say? He recited it without hesitation. A dead letter cannot speak. I felt it before I understood it. That line was on the threat letters. Yes. All three. Yes. So you met him, in person. If the handwriting on the napkin matches the one we find now, yes. I stood. Where did this panel happen again? The Armitage Club, on Lexington. They still serve lunch? They serve grudge and memory. Go. The Armitage Club hadn't changed since Taft. Same liveried bellhop, same mahogany bar that smelled of brandy and brass polish. I gave my name and said I was researching the Wartime Symposium series. The man at the front desk, a hollow-cheeked veteran of the cloakroom wars, checked a log and summoned the manager. Mr. Wainwright appeared. Trim moustache, vest too tight. We don't keep records for events older than a decade, he said. I'm not looking for records. Then what? A napkin. He frowned. Excuse me? 1944. A symposium on wartime censorship. Someone wrote something on a linen napkin. Wolfe remembers it. He blinked. Then something shifted. Come with me. He led me down a hall lined with framed menus and portrait sketches. At the end, a narrow door opened into a supply closet, or what looked like one. Inside, a glass display case. He tapped the panel. Club curiosities, a long-standing tradition. Items left behind that were deemed unusual. The second shelf, left corner. Folded, browned with age, mounted on velvet. I bent forward. A cloth napkin. Faint pencil marks still legible. A dead letter cannot speak. Beneath it, a typed card. Donated, 1945. Unknown author. Retrieved from post-panel luncheon, de certain 1944. I stared at it. May I photograph it? No. Copy it? Yes, but not remove it. I took out a pad and slowly replicated each angle. The quote, the underline, the initials scrawled just under the hem. MG, no embellishment, just letters. Wainwright waited. When did this arrive? I asked. January 45. The waiter who collected the linen found it and brought it to the manager. He liked the phrasing. Who signed it in? No one. Any idea who wrote it? None, just appeared. Did anyone ever inquire about it? Never. Until now. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe had not moved from his chair. The office was darker now, save for a single lamp. The orchids had gone silent. I placed my notepad before him. He read it once, then again. Then he tapped the initials. MG. Marcus Galt. Yes. He closed his eyes. It was him. And that phrase? A philosophy, a warning, and a creed. He left it deliberately. Yes. To be remembered. No. To be revived. I folded my arms. That napkin, it wasn't a throwaway. No. It was a signature. Wolfe nodded. I exhaled. Then he's been planning this for a long time. Planning, yes, but more than that. What? Rehearsing. Meaning. He wanted to see if silence would outlive him. When it didn't, he came back to correct it. And the typewriter. His voice. And the letters. His edits. I said nothing. Wolfe looked out the window. Manhattan blinked in the dark, unconcerned. But we were concerned, and the man with the smudged E's was not finished. Not yet. The boarding house crouched beside the East River like a tenant that had overstayed its lease with time. The stonework was cracked in all the right places, the railing on the stoop rusted into obedience, and a cat watched me from the third-floor windowsill with more skepticism than I was used to getting from actual people. I pressed the buzzer twice and straightened my tie. The woman who answered had thin lips, thick shoes, and the kind of hair that knew no disobedience. She didn't open the screen. Yes, I put on my mildest voice. My name is Archibald Goodwin. I'm looking for a relative of mine, Marcus Galt. She looked me up and down. You said relative? Distant cousin. We served in different branches. Her eyes narrowed. He's gone. Gone where? She didn't answer. I haven't seen him in years, I said, but I heard he was here. I just want to know he's all right. She opened the screen and stepped onto the stoop. You a lawyer? No, ma'am. Police? Nothing official. She studied me a second longer. Then she sighed. Come in. I'll show you the room. The inside smelled like last week's coffee and rain that didn't finish drying. We climbed one flight, then another. The steps creaked like they knew how old they were. She stopped at the end of the hall, room 3B. He left 3 days ago, no warning. He leave a note? Nope. Mail? None. Visitors? She shook her head. He paid in cash, week to week. Did he say where he was going? No, but he was twitchy. I raised a brow. Used to be quiet, then he started talking in his sleep. What did he say? She looked embarrassed. I didn't write it down. Did he leave anything behind? She hesitated. Some papers. He said to burn them. Did you? No, I don't throw out other people's ghosts. She unlocked the door and stepped aside. The room was bare bones, metal-framed bed, one chair, one desk, one lamp that flickered when I flipped the switch. On the desk, under a chipped paperweight, lay a stack of ribbon-stained pages. I lifted the top sheet, typed, spaced deliberately. Same mechanical font, same fading crescent beneath every E. I read aloud. You silenced the others, but you will not silence me. You wore a suit while I wore blood. You judged me from behind paper and panels and initials. At the bottom, in larger font, to Nero Wolfe. With 2 O's, I smiled despite myself. He'd heard the name, but not seen it in print. I slid the sheet into my briefcase and checked the rest. 4 pages total. 3 were failed drafts, crossed out with heavy pencil strokes. One had a coffee ring, another had words scratched into the margins. Vance, Tar, Bream. Next to them, numbers, maybe addresses, maybe not. There was also a folded envelope tucked beneath the stack. Empty. Postmarked but unsealed. Addressed in block letters to a post office box in Queens. I pocketed it. Back downstairs, the woman stood with her arms folded. You a real cousin? No, she nodded. Didn't think so. But he mattered to someone. That much I can promise. She looked away. He used to hum at night, she said. Before he started talking. A slow tune. Didn't recognize it. I thanked her and left. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe had abandoned his chair only to pace between it and the bookshelf. When I entered, he turned and stared as though I were late to an appointment he hadn't made. I handed him the top page. He read it once, then again. Then he tapped the misspelled name. Deliberate? No, he never saw it written, only heard it. Probably said aloud by someone who didn't care for consonants. Wolfe exhaled. And the tone? Same as the others. Vengeful, measured, typed on the Adler. Wolfe studied the paper again. The spacing is controlled, punctuation precise, not the work of a madman. No, just a man who feels erased. Did you find anything else? 3 pages, notes, marginalia, names, Vance, Tar, Bream. Suggesting sequence, or blame. Wolfe nodded once. And the envelope? Unmailed, addressed to a P.O. box in Queens. Anonymous return. None listed. Wolfe paced again. He intended to write one for me, but hadn't finished. Or hadn't decided how much I deserved. He didn't answer. I watched him. What is it? He stopped pacing. Intent, Mr. Goodwin. We now have his motive, his tools, and his targets. What we do not yet have is his final intent. He's killed once. Yes, but if this letter was meant for me and not sent, then I'm either a future target or a final message. I sat. Want me to check the P.O. box? No, Kramer would be less gentle, better let him do it. So what do? We prepare. For what? Wolfe folded the page and slid it into an envelope of his own. For an audience. With Galt? No, with Bream. He looked at me. We find him, before Galt does. And then? Wolfe tapped the envelope. Then we listen. And if he doesn't speak? He will. Wolfe sat, because that, in the end, was the wager, that the next man wouldn't be silenced by fear or shame or an old letter that hadn't quite died. Not yet. The Galt house sat 3 blocks from Gramercy Park, where respectability gathered behind wrought-iron fencing, and the curtains were always drawn with dignity. Claudia Galt had remarried, but she hadn't changed addresses. That told me something. Either she had roots, or she wanted people to know she still had them. I rang the bell and waited. She opened the door herself, not a maid, not a butler, not even the clipped voice of someone pretending they had help. She wore dove grey, and she wore it like a verdict. Her hair was pinned neatly. Her smile was not. "Mr. Goodwin?" "Yes, ma'am." "I've heard the name. I believe you work for Mr. Wolfe." I gave a nod. "You believe correctly." "Then I assume this isn't social." "I'm afraid not." She stepped aside. The parlour smelled like bergamot and lemon polish. There were no family photographs, just a row of spines, first editions, most of them. An Adler J4 typewriter sat centred on a small desk, perfectly clean, perfectly lit. I noticed it. She noticed me noticing. "Tea?" she asked. "Thank you." She left the room. I moved to the desk. The carriage was locked in place. The ribbon was fresh. A half sheet of paper sat tucked just beneath the roller. Typed, "Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock. Ask for the Sutton file." I glanced down. No smudge on the E. The spacing was clean. This wasn't our Adler. But it was close. Too close. I slid my notepad across the edge of the desk and with one hand tugged the paper free. Folded once. Slipped it under the cuff of my jacket. Recentered a fresh sheet from the drawer beneath. She returned with a silver tray. "I don't suppose you'll tell me what this is about," she said. "I could, but you tell me you haven't seen Marcus in 4 years. She paused. A smile formed. That would be true. He never wrote? No. No messages, no phone calls? Nothing. And yet, I gestured at the typewriter, you still use the same model. She didn't blink. Is that a crime? Depends what was typed on it. It's not his, it's mine. Where did you get it? Bought it, last spring, stationer on East 43rd. I stirred my tea. You never visited him? Not since the annulment. That's different from divorce. It was cleaner. Her hands remained still, but her right thumb twitched once, then again. And before the annulment? He was different. How so? After the war, Marcus never came back whole. He said things that didn't make sense, not to me, not to anyone. But he wrote. Yes, and rewrote. He had drafts of things he would never finish, half-typed pages, sentences without endings. Where are those pages? I burned them. You're sure? Quite. Was he angry? Bitter, but not angry. Anger implies energy. Marcus was cold. I sipped the tea. She'd stirred hers, but not touched it. Did he ever talk about Vance or Tar? No. Bream? No. Did you know he blamed them? She looked down. When he left me, she said softly, he left more than the house. He left a journal. I opened it once. It was full of clipped names, margins crowded with phrases. They silenced me. The committee of 3. Wolfe will know. He wrote Wolfe's name, she nodded, with 2 O's. That earned a sigh from me. Did he ever mention a typewriter? Her hand trembled. The teacup wobbled slightly. She steadied it too quickly. No. I let the silence grow thick. You're sure? Yes. Because I've seen what was typed on it. She met my eyes. So have I. That stopped me. I mean, she said quickly, I remember his style. He liked to type poems, angry ones. But this wasn't poetry. She said nothing. I think, I said, that someone typed a letter using that exact machine. She didn't move. I think it was taken from a print shop, and I think Marcus wanted it back. Still nothing. I leaned forward. Claudia, if you know where he is... I don't. But you think he's alive. I think, if he were dead, I would have known. How? He was never capable of disappearing without meaning it. I stood. Thank you for the tea. She rose too, but slower. At the door she asked, if he sends a letter? He already has. She swallowed. Will you tell me if someone else dies? That depends on whether you help us prevent it. I tipped my hat and stepped into the cold. Wolfe examined the page under his magnifier. He didn't sit. He stood by the lamp, turning the sheet under the light. No smudge, he said. Clean. Perfect. Not the Adler. No. But the same model. Yes. She's covering. Of course. Did she admit it? No, but her hand shook when I mentioned it. Wolfe folded the paper once and placed it on the desk. She knows where it is. I think so. She may even know who's used it. Or used it herself. Wolfe's lip curled. She lacks the temperament, but not the opportunity. I nodded. She had access. She's remarried now, but the typewriter was in her home, untouched, lit, centered. Wolfe sat. Place her on the periphery, not the origin. I leaned forward. You think she helped him? No. Then what? She preserved him. He looked at the fire, already low in the grate. And now, he said, she's protecting a ghost. I didn't answer, because ghosts didn't scare Wolfe, but liars did, especially ones who typed well. It was nearing 4:30 when Fritz entered with the card. I was still sorting correspondence from that morning, 3 bills, 2 letters requesting Wolfe's autograph, and 1 hopeful invitation to judge a sausage contest in Yonkers. Fritz spoke quietly. She insists it is urgent. I took the card. It read, Elsa Tarr. The ink trembled slightly. The handwriting had changed. I nodded once. Fritz left. Wolfe didn't ask. He'd seen the name. He closed his eyes and tilted his head slightly, waiting for the knock. It came, not timidly, but with effort. 3 measured raps, spaced with unnatural care. I opened the door. Elsa Tarr stood on the stoop. No fur, no pearls, no gloves. Her eyes held an unnatural focus, and her blouse had been buttoned 1 notch too high, as though to hold something in. Miss Tarr? She nodded. Once. I stepped aside. She moved with the delicacy of someone afraid the floor might vanish. Wolfe waited in the office, hands folded on the desk. He did not rise. He rarely did. Miss Tarr, he said, you were in Connecticut. No. I see. She took one of the red chairs without prompting. I was at Crestwood Clinic. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. I moved to the corner of the room, notepad idle. I checked myself in 8 days ago, she said. A voluntary stay. May I ask why? Because Marcus Galt came to see me. Wolfe blinked once. In person? He asked. Yes. He is alive. She nodded. I hadn't seen him since 46. I thought he was gone, or in Europe. And he found you. She closed her eyes. I don't know how. Did he threaten you? She shook her head. He accused me. Of what? Silencing the truth. And what truth is that? Her hands clenched in her lap. He said I buried the file, that I'd scrubbed the article, that I let the committee cover the names. He said I'd become them. Wolfe frowned. Did you? Her jaw worked against something. Then she met his gaze. I published what I could. The rest was redacted. By whom? By the board. Under pressure? Yes. From whom? I don't know. It never came directly, but it came. Wolfe exhaled through his nose. Miss Tarr, he said softly, why did you come here today? Because I thought I'd feel safer. Wolfe closed his eyes again. Have you had contact since? No. Letters? No. Did he mention anyone else? She hesitated. He said I wasn't alone. In the silencing? In the guilt? I stepped forward. I'll drive you home, I said. She looked at Wolfe. He nodded. Be careful, he said, not to her, but to me. We left the brownstone in a silence that made the engine sound like a hammer on tile. Her building was 5 floors of old brick and wary windows, just off Park Avenue. The doorman was absent. I took the steps with her, one at a time. She unlocked the front door. The air inside told me something was wrong before the light did. Papers littered the floor. Her sofa cushions had been split, the stuffing clawed out. One of her framed watercolours lay shattered face down. She froze. Stay by the door, I said. I stepped in slowly. No sound from the kitchen, no footsteps overhead. The desk had been forced open. A drawer hung loose, its track split clean through. On the floor beneath it, a single sheet of typescript. Crumpled, stepped on, but not taken. I picked it up. The sentence read, "Must be named even if the Tribune refuses to run the piece." Elsa stood behind me now. "That wasn't mine," she said. "No?" "It's his." She moved forward, picked up a second sheet near the fireplace. It was blank, except for a smear of ink near the corner. Was anything missing? She shook her head. Nothing here was worth stealing. I pointed to the typewriter on her bureau. Was that his? No, it's mine. Same model? Close, but not the same. I folded the crumpled page. We'll keep this. She didn't argue. I called in the break-in, then drove her to the Hotel Holland and paid for the room myself. She didn't protest that either. When I got back to the brownstone, it was near 6. Wolfe was at his desk, sipping beer. The radiator hissed like an impatient schoolmistress. "She's safe?" he asked. "For now." "And the apartment?" "Flipped." "Taken?" "No, searched." "By whom?" "No prints, no note." I handed him the sheet. He read it, twice, then laid it flat on the blotter and stared at it. "She said Marcus wrote this." "She did." "But the type?" "Same family, not identical." He drummed his fingers. She was frightened. "Yes." "But not by him." "No." "Then whom?" I said nothing. He took another sip of beer, then leaned back. "She believes he's hunting names." "She does. And someone else is hunting him." "Possibly." He closed his eyes. "That," he said, "is intolerably inconvenient." There was a pause. Then he spoke again. "Marcus Galt is not alone." "No." "There is another hand in this, perhaps more than one." "Agreed." He tapped the paper again. "And whoever turned that apartment inside out was not looking for jewellery." "No." "They were looking for this." He lifted the sheet. "Or others like it." He turned in his chair, finally looking at me. "Mr. Goodwin, I think it is time we found the editor's original notes." "You think she has them?" "I think she once did, and now they're missing." I nodded. "And if they turn up?" He stared at the page. "They will tell us who silenced what, and why." Another beat. "Do you trust her?" I asked. "No." "Neither do I." He folded the page. "But I believe her." Which, from Wolfe, was something close to mercy. The doorbell rang once, not in a hurry, but loud enough to vibrate the hinges. I was on the red chair, tapping the edge of a notepad with the corner of my thumbnail. Wolfe's eyebrows lifted, mildly affronted. Fritz predictably did not stir from the kitchen. I went. I opened the door the customary 8 inches. Inspector Kramer filled the frame like a coal stove in July, bristling, squared, and radiating a private weather system. "You've got 5 seconds, Goodwin." I held it at 6, then stepped aside. Kramer marched in. No hat, no coat. His right hand held a folded document as though it had grown teeth. Wolfe didn't rise. "Inspector!" "No pleasantries," Kramer barked. "I'm past that." Wolfe gestured toward the client chair. Kramer ignored it. He advanced to the desk, dropped the paper with a dry slap. Wolfe eyed it, didn't touch. "Well?" "A 4th letter," Kramer said. "Found this morning." "Where?" "Vance's apartment." "In the mailbox?" "In the fireplace." Wolfe looked up. "Ah." "Buried in the ashbed. Only thing not consumed." "Was it folded?" "Tucked into the grate, behind the guard." Wolfe now reached, unfolded the sheet slowly. Typed. Old ribbon. No envelope. Wolfe read silently. Then once again. Then once more. Kramer tapped a foot. "Well?" "I'm reading." "You're buying time." "I'm reading carefully." I leaned forward. The letter, smudged but legible, read, "Leonard, you've twisted the game. I never meant this to bleed. If you publish, I'm dead. You know that. But you want more. The letters, the tapes, the photograph. You want it all. And I know why. Because you're not reporting. You're blackmailing. So be it." P.R. Wolfe placed the letter flat upon the desk. "No envelope?" "No, just that." "No initials on the back?" "No." "Typed?" "Yes." "Machine?" "Old Remington. No serial plate, possibly borrowed." Wolfe closed his eyes. "Do you believe it's authentic?" "No." "Why?" "It reads like theatre." Wolfe gave a slight nod. "Then why bring it here?" "Because you're already knee-deep." Wolfe raised one eyebrow. And because it smells like someone's trying to be clever. Wolfe gestured. The letter suggests blackmail, but not by Galt. Kramer snorted. Unless PR is Galt. Wolfe said nothing. I reached for the notepad. Do we have a PR? I asked. Kramer didn't blink. You tell me. I jotted the letters. PR. Then below it, one name. Pamela Riggins. Wolfe was staring at the letter, but his mind was not. He spoke. This was planted. Yeah? Whoever placed it knew the ashes would be swept. Unless, I added, they knew the fireplace hadn't been touched. Kramer crossed his arms. You think it's a frame-up? Wolfe nodded. Yes. Of whom? Of Marcus Galt. Kramer stiffened. Careful. Wolfe opened a hand. This is not his voice. You knew his voice? I knew his rhythm. Wolfe pressed his fingertips together. The phrasing, the panic, the staged bravado. This is mimicry. Deliberate. Yes. Then who? Wolfe paused. You recall the third letter? Kramer grunted. The one mailed to Tar? Yes. It had grit. This has flair. Kramer moved to the fireplace, looked into the empty grate, turned back. So someone wrote this to steer us. Yes. Toward? A false PR. Pamela? Wolfe inclined his head. Possibly. Kramer scratched his temple. I've got 6 people on her. Wolfe smiled faintly. You'll need 8. Kramer spun. You playing at riddles? No. He gestured at the letter. This is misdirection. Kramer turned again, paced once to the window, looked down on the street. When he turned back, the volume was up a notch. I've got a body, a fire, 3 typed letters, and now this. Drama in the ash heap. Wolfe didn't flinch. Kramer stepped close. I want a name. You have several. A new one. I have none. Kramer's jaw flexed. You're stalling. No. You think this is a game? No. Then give me something. Wolfe's tone remained flat. You've already taken everything I have. The hell I have. You've taken letters, transcripts, carbon impressions. You've interviewed Tar twice. You've spoken to her publisher. You've canvassed her floor. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Wolfe continued. And yet you return, again, because you cannot make sense of what you've gathered. That so? Yes. Then help me. No. Kramer stepped forward, both palms on the desk now. You're obstructing. No. You're holding out. No. You're playing both ends. Wolfe's lips twitched. Not amusement. Fatigue. I'm cultivating clarity. I need charges. I need certainty. Kramer straightened, pushed off from the desk. I'm not bluffing, Wolfe. I'm aware. If you're holding back, I'm not. Or hiding, I'm not. Or guessing, I never guess. There was silence, only the ticking of the small brass clock behind Wolfe's orchids. Then Kramer said, I'll be back. Wolfe inclined his head. I expect nothing less. Kramer walked to the door, then turned. If I find out you've known who wrote that letter, you won't. Why? Because I don't. Kramer nodded, once, then left. The door clicked behind him. I stood. That went well. Wolfe's eyes were closed. He didn't answer. I walked to the desk, tapped the letter. You believe it's fake? Yes. But someone wanted it found. Yes. By us? No. Then who? The Tribune. I blinked. They wanted it? No. They needed it? No. He opened his eyes. They buried the first 3. This one they would run. I sat again. Wolfe sighed. Mr. Goodwin. Yes? Find out how many people knew Vance had a fireplace. And who had access to the ash bucket. I reached for the phone. PR. He paused, then, keep her in the file. Top of the list? Not yet. He looked out the window. The author of this letter wanted to be noticed. I leaned back. Then they succeeded. No. Why not? Because they spelled blackmailing with a K. The knock came with no rhythm and less patience. 2 sharp raps, a pause, then 3 more, slightly louder. I was halfway through a sentence in my notebook. Wolfe glanced over his reading glasses without lifting his head. "Mr. Leach," he said, flatly. I got up and made my way to the door. The man outside was changed. Emery Leach stood on the stoop like he'd just wrestled a locomotive. Collar crooked, face damp, eyes clouded with something past worry. He didn't wait for an invitation. When I stepped aside, he pushed through like a man who'd just crossed a battlefield and wasn't sure which side had won. I shut the door behind him. Fritz remained politely out of sight. Leach stopped short of Wolfe's desk, looking at the yellow chair, then at Wolfe himself. "I didn't know where else to go," he said, voice low and hoarse. "You've been somewhere," I offered. He didn't turn. Wolfe spoke evenly. "Sit, Mr. Leach." The man sank into the red client chair as if the bottom might drop out beneath him. His hands gripped the armrests tight. "It wasn't robbery," he said. I moved to the edge of the desk. Leach continued. "They didn't take a thing, not a dime, but the place." He drew in a shallow breath. "They tore it up, smashed the cabinets, pulled every drawer, threw type cases to the floor, ink spilled like someone meant it." Wolfe's gaze narrowed. "When?" "Last night. Between midnight and 4, maybe. I don't live above the shop anymore. My brother-in-law, he called me at 5, said the door was hanging open like a mouth." I leaned on the edge of the desk. "No alarm?" Leach shook his head. "Never needed one, not in 20 years. His eyes, glassy now, found Wolfe again. "But that's not the worst part." "Then what is?" Leach opened his jacket. From the inner pocket he withdrew a folded sheet of thick stock, off-white and marred by a thumb-sized grease stain. He unfolded it with care, revealed a photograph. It was Wolfe, a studio portrait, black and white, trimmed for a magazine profile years ago. Wolfe seated, yellow chair cropped out of frame, his expression mildly irritated, not with the photographer, but the world. The image had a neat slit through the left lapel. I leaned in. It had been pinned to something, more than pinned. "A knife," Leach said, "an old linoleum blade, right through the chest." Wolfe didn't blink. I reached out and took the photo. No note on the back, no signature. Wolfe studied Leach for a full 10 seconds. "You did not bring this because it offended you," he said. Leach licked his lower lip. "No." "You brought it because you were frightened." "Yes." "Not for me." Leach didn't answer. Wolfe's voice remained calm. "For yourself." Leach nodded once. "I don't scare easy, Mr. Wolfe, but this, whoever did this, knows me. They knew where the spare key was hidden. They knew the lock's been sticky. They knew how to get in without shattering glass." "Which means they wanted time," I said. Leach turned toward me. "And precision." Wolfe tapped the armrest with one finger. "The photograph?" "In my top drawer. Been there for months. You gave it to me with the letterhead, remember?" "I remember." "You asked for samples. A watermark that wouldn't bleed under heat." "Indeed." Wolfe closed his eyes for 3 beats. "Describe the rest." "The shelves were torn down, every drawer yanked, but only 2 cabinets were emptied." "Which?" "The client archive and the invoice box." "Nothing else?" Leach shook his head. "Not the stamps, not the cash drawer, not even the cigar tin with petty coins." Wolfe's eyes opened again. "So, not a theft?" "No." "A search?" "Yes." Wolfe leaned back, steepled his fingers. "They want something." "They already took it," I muttered. Leach stiffened. "No. Everything was there. Every copy, every carbon, every plate. They didn't take anything." Wolfe raised a brow. "You're sure?" "I triple-checked. It's all there." "Then they weren't after an object." Leach looked puzzled. "They were after a message." Wolfe gestured toward the photo still in my hand. "They left this to be found." Leach exhaled sharply. "So what do I do?" "Nothing," Wolfe said. That startled him. "Nothing?" Wolfe nodded. "Go back. Replace the lock. Say nothing to the police. Reinforce your drawers. Hire a night watchman." "Is that all?" "No." Wolfe turned his head toward me. "Archie." "Yes, sir." "Do you recall Miss Pamela Riggins?" I didn't have to think. "Secretary, wartime panel, sharp typist, sharper mouth, moved uptown after the board disbanded." "Yes." Wolfe turned to Leach. "She once worked with Mr. Vance." Leach looked up. "She knew him?" "Intimately. She managed the distribution records." "And you think she—" "I don't think. I inquire." Wolfe settled back deeper into the yellow chair. "Mr. Goodwin, visit her now." I stood. She'll be at the service? She owns it. Still on 86th? Moved. Lexington near 91st. I nodded. Got it. Wolfe's gaze returned to Leach. You may leave the photograph. I'll keep it. Leach hesitated. Do you think it's... I think someone wants me to react. He closed his eyes once more. I don't. I walked to the hall, fetched my coat. Leach rose slowly. The weight of unspoken things bent his shoulders. At the door, he turned back. I'm sorry I brought this so late. Wolfe didn't look up. You brought it exactly when you should. The door shut behind him. I adjusted my tie. Anything particular I should ask her? Yes. Wolfe's voice was quiet. Ask her who typed the 4th letter. Even if she says she didn't? She won't. I opened the door. And if she lies? Wolfe gave the faintest shrug. Bring me the lie. I'll see where it smudges. I left, coat collar up, notebook in pocket, mind whirring like the first press run of the morning. The city outside had cooled, the snow had stopped. But something was building, slow, deliberate, and close. Pamela Riggins would either confirm it or detonate it. The sign on the window read, Riggins Typing and Transcription, by appointment only. It sat nestled between a hat repairer and a deli with no menu, the sort of place that sold whatever the butcher had spare. It was 3:30, the sidewalk was half snow, half slush, and I'd traded dry socks for cold ankles somewhere around Lexington. Inside, the office was silent except for the low whir of a fan heater and the ticking of a bronze desk clock. Pamela Riggins looked like the type who never used an eraser. She was tall, mid-40s, with grey-streaked hair pinned back in a twist. Her blouse was pearl-buttoned, her collar stiff, and her mouth had the kind of line that suggested she didn't open it unless necessary. She glanced up. You're here about Mr. Wolfe. That got my attention. Have you spoken to him recently? No. Her fingers returned to the underwood on her desk. But I recognize your shoes. I looked down. They were clean. From where? Congressional War Panel, Room 9C. You used to hover. You're Mr. Goodwin. Still am. I sat, uninvited. The chair was hard and meant to discourage loitering. I'm following up on an old name. Whose? Galt. She didn't blink. I typed one manuscript for him. Nothing classified. It was personal. Recently? No. She adjusted the ribbon lever. 1944, maybe 45. You were close? No. Flat. Too flat. I heard you knew Leonard Vance. This time the fingers paused. She didn't look up. I knew his assistant. That was all. I didn't press, not yet. Did you know Emery Leach? No. I nodded toward a framed photograph behind her. You kept your war panel badge? I earned it. I'm not questioning that, just making sure you remember the context. Her eyes met mine, cool and unwavering. I never forget what I've typed. I stood. Mind if I use your powder room? There isn't one for clients. That wasn't unexpected. Then I'll be direct. I reached into my coat and took out the envelope. It held a copy of the forged letter, the one Wolfe had marked in red pencil. She looked at it. I didn't type that. Are you sure? She studied the alignment. The lowercase g is off. That's what caught our attention. She placed the page back on the desk. You think this came from my office? No, I think it came from your apartment. Now she looked up. Excuse me? Trash bins, I said. They're not as private as most people assume. She stood. What were you doing near my building? Following up. I reached inside my coat again. This time I placed a sheet of carbon paper on her desk. It was folded, but one corner bore the imprint of a signature. Hers, typed on the same machine. Someone's been busy, I said. She sat back down. For the first time, something flickered behind her eyes. I needed money. That's not illegal. I was asked to recreate something from memory. An old letter, nothing harmful. By whom? She didn't answer. You knew Galt, I said. You typed for him. You knew Vance. You typed for him too. I never typed for Vance. Then how did his name end up in your trash? Silence. I let it sit. She adjusted her cuffs. I was asked to produce a copy. For legal purposes. I didn't ask why. Legal purposes usually involve lawyers or subpoenas, not typewriters and cash. I didn't kill anyone. Her voice was thin now. I believed her. But that wasn't the point. I stood again. You'll be getting a visit. From the police? No, from a man who doesn't leave his house unless the orchids rebel. And they haven't yet. Her expression didn't change. You mean Mr. Wolfe? Yes. I tipped my hat, which I wasn't wearing, and made for the door. She spoke as I reached for the handle. I didn't know they'd use it to hurt anyone. I paused. Who's they? She didn't reply. The hallway outside smelled like radiator steam and yesterday's soup. I waited till I was out of earshot before pulling out the envelope. Inside was the original. The carbon I'd shown her had come from her bin, but the trick was letting her think I knew more than I did. Back on the sidewalk, the wind had picked up. 2 blocks down, a dry cleaner's awning was flapping like a trapped bird. I flagged a cab. The driver looked like he'd learned English from prize fights. Where to? West 35th, I said. Brownstone with a conscience. He didn't ask questions. Back in the office, Wolfe didn't look up. Miss Riggins? He asked. Elegant, cold, knows her way around a ribbon spool. She admitted it. She waltzed with the truth, but never kissed it. Did you obtain a sample? I dropped the carbon on the desk. She used the stolen machine, no question. But she is not the killer. I agree. He reached for the envelope. Then the question remains. He unfolded the letter. If not her, who? He tapped the margin twice, then set the page aside. Fritz, he called. Sir? Bring the Rosso di Montalcino. I wish to contemplate forgery with something bold. I sat. Want me to start digging? Yes. He closed his eyes. Begin with the client's list of war panel members. Cross-check it against anyone with a motive. Alive or dead? All the better if presumed dead. Fritz returned with the bottle. Wolfe opened his eyes. Miss Riggins forged the past. I want the man who's rewriting it. I picked up my notebook. Carefully, he added. They've already pierced my lapel. I prefer to keep my chest intact. I stood, adjusted my coat, and turned toward the door. Archie. Yes? He held up the carbon. Excellent spacing, impeccable rhythm. Shame about the ethics. He poured a glass. And the company she keeps. Wolfe was buttering a crumpet with alarming precision. Fritz had set a modest tea, white asparagus in vinaigrette, toasted rye, and quince jam from a jar shaped like a crown. The orchid schedule had concluded 3 minutes prior. I was on the red chair, nursing a mild contempt for jam. Then Fritz, polishing a small silver tray at the sideboard, spoke. One of the earlier envelopes, the ones mailed to Miss Galt, had a thumbprint. I remember because it was purple. He said it like one might comment on cloud shapes. Wolfe looked up, blinked once, then laid down the butter knife. A thumbprint? Yes, sir. I recall it clearly. The police brought it here before you declined the case. It was faint, left in what I assumed was grape jelly or cheap ink. Wolfe sat back. His mouth was closed, but something inside his head was moving furniture. Archie. Yes, sir. Retrieve that envelope, from Kramer, immediately. I'll need to dance through precinct politics. Then wear proper shoes. I stood, shrugged into my coat, and left. 30 minutes later, I was at Kramer's desk, watching him squeeze mustard onto a sausage roll. You think I'm running a museum, he said, chewing. Your archive would disagree. He squinted. You want the Galt envelope? With the purple thumbprint. He made a face. I remember it. Smelled like lilacs. He rifled through a drawer, extracted a slim manila file and slid it toward me. Sign it out. You're not keeping it. I wouldn't dream of it. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe had vacated his chair and retreated to the plant room. The envelope waited under a bell jar on his desk. He insisted we use the glass to avoid contamination, though I suspect he enjoyed the museum effect. The thumbprint was clear under the magnifier. Purple, yes, but not random. Later that evening, I took it to the lab. The technician, named Wallace, smoked with surgical stillness. We're running it against the earlier samples, he said. He tapped a metal tray. You gave us Claudia Galt's fingerprint when she signed that release. I did. 10 minutes passed. Then Wallace came back, holding a card. Match, he said. I blinked. You're sure? Identical spiral patterns, no question. Thank you, I said. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe had just begun dinner. Trout with lemon, no wine. His stomach had been mutinous since noon. I delivered the results. He looked at the card, then closed his eyes. Mr. Goodwin, he said. Call Miss Galt. Then call Miss Riggins, Mr. Lansing, and Inspector Kramer. Here, tonight, no exceptions. They arrived one by one. Claudia wore blue with a brooch shaped like a sail. Her shoes were too tight for comfort, but her expression was calm. Pamela Riggins looked as if she'd come to collect rent. Lansing had changed coats since the last visit. Still smelled faintly of clove oil. Kramer entered last, trailing snow. We seated them in the office. Red chairs for guests. Wolfe in yellow, I by the globe. Wolfe began without pleasantries. "Each of you has seen the threat letters," he said. "The final one was typed on Miss Galt's home machine. Its envelope bears her thumbprint, purple, accidental, but unmistakable." Claudia's breath caught. That's not possible." "It is," Wolfe said. He produced a sheet of paper. "This was typed this morning on the same machine. Mr. Goodwin obtained the typewriter under pretense of collecting it for repair." Kramer frowned. "You sent Archie to her flat?" "No," I said, "to her parlour. It was in the corner, beside a framed sketch of a bird." Wolfe lifted the page. "Observe, the alignment, the faulty lowercase g, all identical." Pamela Riggins leaned forward. "Anyone could have used that typewriter." "Indeed," Wolfe said. He opened a drawer. From it he drew out a second page, similar in appearance but subtly different. "This sheet," he continued, "was typed an hour ago on the same machine, but I applied a tracing powder, transparent, beneath the ribbon." He handed it to Kramer. "Would you mind placing that in an evidence bag?" Kramer did so. "You expect fingerprints?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "One set, the one that touched the keys." Claudia's hands trembled now. "I haven't touched it in days." "Miss Galt," Wolfe said softly, "you typed the letter." "No," she stood. "I swear I didn't." Wolfe remained still. "Then you have nothing to fear. The police will verify whose prints lie beneath the ink." She looked at Lansing. He didn't return it. Pamela turned to her. "Why would you do it?" Claudia sat again. Her voice was smaller. "I didn't know it would go so far. The letters were supposed to scare Riggins. She's been digging around about my father's disappearance. I wanted her to stop." Pamela stared. "You forged threats to shut me up?" Claudia didn't answer. Kramer stood. "I'll need to take you in." "I didn't kill anyone," she said. "I believe that," Wolfe replied. "But the threats set the table for murder, and your actions concealed evidence that might have prevented it." Claudia stood slowly. Her brooch caught the lamplight, glinting like a tear. Kramer guided her out. Pamela rose next. "I won't press charges for the threats," she said quietly, "but I won't forget." Wolfe nodded. Lansing lingered. "She really didn't do it, did she?" "No," Wolfe said. "She lacked the temperament for violence, but she made it easier for someone who did." He poured a glass of sherry and sipped. "Tomorrow, we find that person." The room was still. Outside, the snow had started again, and in the hallway, Fritz cleared the tea tray. Silver now spotless. The drawing room was quiet, save the crackle of the fireplace and the clink of china. Fritz had cleared the dinner tray, and the scent of lemon and roast quail lingered faintly in the air. I stood beside the globe. Kramer had just arrived. He tossed his hat to the rack with more grace than usual, and settled into the red chair to Wolfe's right. Pamela Riggins arrived next, coat still damp from the street. Lansing followed, shoulders hunched, tie awry. Claudia came last. She moved slowly, eyes downcast, brooch gone. Wolfe sat square in his yellow chair, legs planted, fingers templed beneath his chin. He waited until the door clicked shut behind Fritz, then began. "I promised brevity," Wolfe said. 12 sentences. Listen carefully." His voice was low and deliberate. 1. The first threat letter, typed on an Olympia Model 8, was written by Marcus Vance. 2. He forged the second and third letters as well, using Claudia Galt's typewriter during his visits to her home. 3. Pamela Riggins discovered the deception after Marcus confessed, fearful of arrest. 4. Rather than report him, she protected him by forging a fourth letter herself, meant to muddy the waters. 5. Claudia, who had unknowingly assisted Marcus by allowing him to use her typewriter, panicked. 6. She feared exposure would tarnish her name and implicate her in a federal crime. 7. So, when Marcus told her he was turning himself in, she followed him and killed him with a brass lamp from the sitting room. 8. She staged the scene to look like a robbery, disheveling drawers, scattering paper, removing a wallet. 9. She returned later to wipe the Olympia clean, but the carbon ink test had already been laid. 10. When she touched the keys, her print settled over the treated ribbon. 11. The purple thumbprint on the envelope, faint but undeniable, belonged to Claudia. 12. That is why the murder weapon was never recovered. Claudia threw it from the 38th Street footbridge that night. He stopped. The silence held for 3 beats. Then Claudia blinked, once, slow, and folded inwards like a page pressed closed. Pamela gasped softly. Kramer didn't move. "No," Claudia said. "That's not how—" Wolfe's gaze didn't flicker. "You can deny the 12th sentence, Miss Galt. But the rest?" She said nothing. Pamela's voice was quiet. "You helped him type those letters." Claudia turned, her expression bare. "I didn't know what they were. He said they were satire for a journal. He was drunk, always drunk. I didn't ask." Kramer stood. "You gave him the typewriter." "I gave him coffee," she whispered. Lansing rubbed his jaw. "Claudia," she raised her hands, "I didn't mean to kill him." "You did," Wolfe said simply. "Not with malice, but with fear." She looked to me, not for help, just to see if I was nodding. I wasn't. Kramer stepped forward. "Miss Galt, I'll need you to come with me." She rose slowly. Her hands were still, but her eyes were wet. "I kept one of the letters," she said, "the one he typed, with my name misspelled." "No doubt," Wolfe replied. Kramer led her out, and the door clicked shut. Pamela stared into the fireplace. "Fear," she said. "Fear did all of this." Wolfe reached for his sherry. "Yes," he said, "but typewriters left fingerprints long before fear ever did." He poured. The liquid caught the lamplight. Manhattan's snow fell unseen, and in the quiet that followed I fetched my coat and locked the door behind them. Kramer didn't speak until they reached the stoop. Claudia's coat was too thin for the night, and she didn't seem to notice. He guided her down the steps, said something I didn't catch, and together they vanished into the drizzle of a city that had stopped asking questions years ago. Pamela lingered near the window. "Is that all?" she asked. Wolfe from the corner lifted his glass of beer. "That is all." She nodded once, collected her purse and left, not with defiance, not with relief, but something closer to grief held tight in both hands. Fritz opened the door for her. Wolfe didn't look up. The fire had gone to embers. I stepped over and added a log. The typewriter ribbon was still on my desk, coiled like a black snake that had lost its bite. Outside, a car started, paused, then reversed. "Archie?" "Yes, sir." "Has Mr. Leach attempted to phone?" "He did, twice. First to thank us, then to offer a bank draft." "Phooey." He waved a hand like brushing away steam. "I prefer thanks unspoken." I picked up the ribbon. It was brittle in places, the letters of their final quarrels ghosting across the strip like unreadable Morse. Wolfe leaned back. "The problem," he said, "is not that people lie. It is that they believe they must." I tossed the ribbon into the fire. It flared for a moment, then darkened, curling into itself like burnt ivy. Wolfe sighed. "Miss Galt will be arraigned." Kramer said he'd handle it personally. "Pamela Riggins?" I shrugged. "Shaken. She'll be all right. There's grit under the perfume." He nodded. Just once. Then quietly, he stood. The act itself was rare enough to make me set down my glass. He walked to the shelf, thumbed along the titles and pulled a slim volume, grey binding, no dust jacket. "Letters from prison," he said. "Kessler." He opened it, read a few lines, closed it again. "You've kept things?" I glanced over. Letters, photos, the odd chess piece. Meaningless. He sat. I didn't argue. The clock ticked. I poured more bourbon, waited. The snow had stopped. Across the street a lamplighter passed, dragging a stick across iron ribs. I leaned back. In this line of work, not all ghosts wear shrouds. Some wear ink. And those, I've learned, are the ones that linger longest.